If you have heard about the many flaws within critical social justice, you may be concerned about the introduction of this ideology at your organization. But before you react, we urge you to first watch this video, where we will help you to navigate your genuine concerns without succumbing to another polarizing worldview. Our society has found itself in a politically fractured and tribalistic position. There is no one side of the political spectrum that can take sole responsibility for this outcome. We know that polar opposites have a tendency to mirror one another. With this in mind, ask yourself, why do you oppose radical forms of social justice? If your answer is that it is divisive, repressive, and censorious, then it might be helpful to track your own reactions as you respond to its excesses. Do your instincts tell you that critical social justice must be stifled at all costs? Do you disregard any and all opinions that oppose yours as the result of indoctrination? Have you perhaps begun to hate anyone who believes in the things you find objectionable? Do you think critical theory should be banned? It could well be that your views, which you hold to be the antithesis of critical theory, have begun to mirror some of its worst elements. To a great extent, these types of reactions are natural and inevitable. Research has demonstrated that humans often think other people are too weak to resist indoctrination or the pull of unsound sources, but they tend to believe they are immune to such biases or mistakes. This is known as the third-person effect. When it comes to our own views, we often assume they are reasonable and considered. Almost everyone thinks there are views or ideologies that are too dangerous for the public to have access to. The problem that can arise from this type of thinking is that we oppose authoritarian impulses when they contradict our beliefs, but we do not view them as authoritarian when they align with our beliefs. Now, if you were an omniscient and omnibenevolent being, and you truly knew what was good for everyone, perhaps this impulse would be a good thing. But since you are, unfortunately, not God, it's not up to you or any one of us to decide for everyone which ideas ought to be allowed and which ought to be wiped off the face of the earth. This, of course, does not mean you cannot argue against, disagree with, or write impassioned essays in opposition to ideas, theories, or politics that you find unethical, unsubstantiated, or generally absurd. But the thing to remember whilst doing all of this is that those who hold ideas you oppose are, just like you, fallible humans, and they may be as caring, empathetic, and smart as you. If we want a more united society, we need to focus on what connects us and not on what divides us. A good way of doing this is by extending the principle of charity. Let's say you encounter someone within your organization who seems to have been taken in by critical social justice. Your first thought might be that they are indoctrinated, unreachable, or possibly idiotic. But it could just be the case that they are a person who feels the world is not what it could be, and is therefore going along with the loudest voices that proclaim they know how to bring on the utopia. You may think this is an error of their reasoning. You might be right, but barring further evidence, this cannot tell you off the bat anything about the person's moral character, intellectual abilities, or if they have malicious motivations. Now, not everyone is reasonable, and you may not be able to open dialogue with every individual you encounter. But finding common ground with people by extending compassion and understanding rather than judgment and hostility is the true antithesis to a divisive ideology. So, to avoid reproducing more of what you oppose, try to separate the ideas from the people. Another danger that can arise after learning of the many problems with critical social justice is that you might begin to associate any talk over equality, social justice, or discrimination with a certain radical ideology. Your fears are likely well-founded, but they may not always lead you in the right direction. They might be causing you to reject out of hand suggestions or perspectives that are reasonable and considered. And they may even be causing you to think in a rigid and authoritarian manner, the same manner that makes critical social justice so illiberal. Consider these phrases: diversity, inclusion, progress, fairness. These are values and principles that most of us think ought to have a central place in a progressive society. Unfortunately, you could have become primed to hear these phrases and immediately recoil, as you may believe they signal an imminent threat. But there are different approaches to social justice, and many who use these terms still use them with their common sense meanings. This is why it's important not to overreact when you hear these phrases, and instead begin from a place of curiosity and empathy. With this approach, you will avoid alienating people or shutting yourself off from other perspectives, and it will be easier to take action against diversity initiatives that give you genuine cause for concern. And if the initiatives are reasonable and desirable, you could even help to contribute to the creation of a more inclusive and equal environment at your organisation. To find out more about how to tell the difference between liberal and critical approaches to social justice, watch our video on this topic now.